We want our children to play. We just have to learn about the medium and the environment in which they're playing in.
Now is not the right time. The right time was 10 years ago. We needed to be doing more of this earlier.
We're probably the first generation to ever really have to tackle this issue of how do we really keep our children safe online.
The fact that resilience is so inherent in gameplay, that you are encouraged to fail and master things. I mean, there aren't many things in life that allow you to do that.
So a lot of companies want to design responsibly, and therefore getting more framework and more words around it, I think also helps the developers that might not have started or done enough in that space.
There needs to be more balance in the dialogue.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Good Game Club podcast. Excited to be on the road now in San Francisco during GDC. How has everything been?
It's been good. It's been sunny. Great conversations. We hosted a great dinner. Inspiring people, inspiring conversations, all about gaming for good. So it's been a good week so far.
I had a wonderful time at that dinner. I think there's a lot of momentum in the industry, and the more we can keep inspiring people and the more we can bring people together that hadn't met each other before, the better it feels.
Exactly. And I think the conversation today is very timely. I think it's one that's important to all of us. As a mother of two boys who are 7 and 3, I think this conversation and what we're about to talk about is it's such a high priority for a lot of people on the planet right now. So I'm really excited to get stuck into the conversation.
And then I think sometimes we have up and coming artists or people adjacent to the industry. Today we have two powerhouses that has a lot of knowledge and a lot of things to talk about. So happy to dig in.
Yeah, and it's a really special one because we're going to be talking about something that launches soon. So it's a sneak peek. But yeah, we've got Marti from Tencent and we've got Susanna Pollack from Games for Change. So welcome. Please could you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about Games for Change and a little bit about what Raising Good Gamers is.
Sure. Well, it's lovely to be here. Thank you, Matthias. Thank you, Jude. And hi, Danny. So I'm Susanna Pollack, and I'm president of an organization called Games for Change. We're a 23-year-old not-for-profit that believes in the power of games beyond entertainment, that games can have a purpose that can drive real-world impact. We've grown alongside the video game industry over the last 2 decades and have seen tremendous interest and growth and adoption in this idea that games can not only be fun and engaging and what has grown into be the most dominant form of entertainment, but also can be used and explored on how it can make the world a better place within games communities, and within global efforts to help people all over the planet. Raising Good Gamers is an initiative we started a few years ago as we want to support young people in our work, not only as future game designers, and we have programs that help develop that opportunity for young people to see themselves as creators, not just consumers of this incredible media, but also looking at their well-being within gaming environments. There are a lot of wonderful initiatives already out there that help the developer community thinking about designing for well-being, but we wanted to focus on another incredible important support group for young people, which is their parents. And helping parents understand what's happening when their children are playing games. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about what it is, but we're so excited about this new focus.
It sounds amazing. And also welcome to you, Danny, a representative from our strategic partner, but also a force for good in this industry. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and why this initiative is dear to you?
My name is Marti, and I oversee the global public affairs team at Tencent. Some of you may know Tencent's a large technology and entertainment company, although it has significant presence in TV, film, music, sports. One of its strengths in the entertainment space is video games. So a lot of what I and the team will do will be to work with stakeholders all around the world to better help explain what it is around the power of play. Video games is a very unique form of entertainment. It is interactive by its very nature. So I think that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it exciting. That's why kids and adults love to play. But it also raises a number of questions and concerns from parents and regulators who I think don't fully understand this medium. So, this initiative that will help bring better understanding, fact-based evidence to what it is that we all do is critically important. So pleasure to join you today.
Yeah, welcome. It's great to have you both here. So I just want to ask it, why now? So why is now the right time for this research about raising good gamers? As a parent, I completely understand, but coming from the games industry, it's a really interesting perspective, because I guess because I play games every day and understand it, and then I help my boys to play games as well, but I do get lots of questions from parents as well. So I'm just really intrigued. Why now?
Well, we're at a moment where games have become one of the most influential environments for young people today. And yet the public discourse is also often fear-based rather than evidence-based, as Danny said. And we're thrilled that with the support of Tencent, we're able to focus our efforts with raising good gamers in helping change the narrative around games through those that have one of the most, the biggest responsibilities of their children. And what we're able to achieve with this program and accompanying research is to combine data and behavioral science research, as well as with families' voices, to help address the questions that parents have in a way that includes families in the conversation, as well as young people in the conversation. So if we want to support this next generation and their well-being, it's so important that we expand the conversation beyond sound bites and panic, and to deeper understanding that leads to ultimately better relationships with parents and their kids, because gaming is a big part of their lives.
I think it's a super relevant topic, and of course, happy to cover it here. It's also the question I get a lot from parents in my sort of immediate life, of people saying, well, is this game good for my kid, or is this okay to play, or do you know something about this? And sometimes it gets so specific, it's hard to answer. Mm-hmm. So getting both the research done and also having more of a sort of both vocabulary and framework around it, I think will help everyone in the industry to also talk about it in a more educated way, because the facts or the evidence is there. If you play age appropriately and if you play with active parents, there's so many benefits from games. But if you're just tossed into playing a die-hard shooter at a way too young age, then of course that can be too brutal. What are some of the inputs that parents have reached out to you about, sort of concrete support for?
Well, I feel like the first misconception that parents have is by coupling games with screen time. And it's really important to separate these conversations, because games aren't social media. They're a completely different type of engagement. And once we start from there, then we can go into questions like, how do I understand what's too much in gaming? How do I help my child stop gaming? Because, there are often times when parents may not understand what's happening with the gaming experience. Be like, it's time for dinner, stop. And things like that aren't possible sometimes. And it's really creates a situation within kids that are often difficult to manage. So how do we as parents understand what's happening so that we can prepare and move those transitions into something that is more positive? Of course, there are like ongoing questions about gaming driving to violence, which has been dispelled through research, but the research isn't available to parents. So how do we break down a lot of these myths and about gaming, as well as provide the resources so parents have that information at their fingertips and can apply them in their daily lives?
We do have a few cultural references that we've seen over the past decades where, regulators, concerned parents will point to film, violent or action-based movies as perhaps, contributing to a decline in morals or, day-to-day, society. We've seen also music. And, parents also have to choose what type of content their child is consuming. I wouldn't allow a 6-year-old to listen to certain music or to watch an R-rated movie because it's not age appropriate. But, some of the arguments that we see in the policy space where like movies or music, contributes to X, we see it carrying over into games when there really is no evidence. It's an emotional reaction. And we have to be able to respond to it and really share better evidence, which I think is sometimes missing.
And I think also, it's so interesting to kind of look at the references that we use because, we're kind of creating, I kind of feel we're pioneering at the moment, all the generations before us have been able to teach our children about how to be safe outside, how to be safe outdoors, how to cross a road, how to climb a tree. We've learned that from generation after generation after generation. But if we think about gaming, we're probably the first generation to ever really have to tackle this issue of how do we really keep our children safe online? How do we engage properly with screen time, the types of content? And so everyone's learning, the industry is learning, parents are learning. It's a minefield for parents. And so I'm so grateful that you're working on this research. But I'm really interested as well to understand more about the policy perspective, like why is this partnership so important from a policy lens?
I think it's unfortunate nature of public policy, but it is often reactive in nature. Even internally in my team, you might have the best plan in place for the year. You're going to do, X, Y, Z proactively, and then the world happens and you have to respond to it. And then you suddenly become reactive. So, having good strategies, having good proactive plans help you counterbalance life's gravitational pull towards being reactive. But in the policy space, what we see happen out of legislatures around the world is often, I would hazard to guess, 90+% reactive rather than kind of proactive, thoughtful, long-term evidence-based legislation. Mm. So in that sense, if we take a step back and say, okay, how do we meet the moment? You asked a few minutes, why is now the right time? Be somewhat controversial. Now is not the right time. The right time was 10 years ago. We needed to be doing more of this earlier, but, the game sector has evolved quite rapidly. Games that exist today didn't exist a short time ago. Now we have the proliferation of user-generated content, these kind of massive open worlds, in-game chat, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're now seeing a gap of knowledge. It's not only the parents, it's the legislatures, it's your neighbors, it's the broader community, so to speak, that they're looking for answers. I think they understand the beauty, the creativity, the community in games, but they also want to make sure that they're doing what they need to do to protect minors. And that is why it's imperative now that we do collect evidence and we share it. And to the extent that there's opportunities for continued evolution and improvement, let's do it, but let's have an honest discussion.
I think it's, from a developer point of view, also interesting because I'm seeing quite a few developers that take this very seriously. So a lot of companies want to design responsibly, and therefore getting more framework and more words around it, I think also helps the developers that might not have started or done enough in that space to see, okay, this is best practice. This is what the industry should be doing more of. And I agree, we should have started this way longer ago. But the fact that it's coming now is also picking up the ball and saying, look, guys, we want to be constructive, both with the legislators and with the parents. What is some of the feedback you've gotten from developers as you've talked about this is an initiative we have coming?
So, I agree with you. There are a lot of developers out there that are already taking this seriously, and there are more resources and tools that are becoming available to them. There are some industry partnerships, like the Thriving in Games Group, that has provided toolkits. There's a partnership with the UNICEF and Lego and the Joan Gans Cooney Center, which is the research arm of Sesame, where there's a Designing for Wellbeing toolkit for games that are specifically designed for young people. And I think there's an openness. I think there's a feeling of responsibility to ensure that all players feel safe and welcome and have their best interests in mind. But it's a collective conversation. The responsibility does not and should not solely reside with the developer community. I think policy, obviously, is a big part of it. And there are other supports within children's lives that can contribute to kind of a holistic understanding, because it is cultural. Games are, in some ways, I was thinking about currency, like a social currency for kids. It's part of their lives. The answer is not to stop playing games. The answer is as a full ecosystem of cross-sector players, how can we collectively ensure that kids are safe, that their interests are in mind, and that gaming environments can be it's not just about protecting them, it's about creating positive experiences for them, because there's so many great things that happen within games that aren't talked about enough, about the skills that are developed within those environments, like critical thinking and problem solving and in communication. I mean, all of this is inherent in gameplay. It's not like an educational mission by the game developers, right? It's not a curriculum that's put in a classroom. It's just inherent in play. And one of the favorite things that I like to remind parents about is the fact that resilience is so inherent in gameplay, that you are encouraged to fail and master things. I mean, there aren't many things in life that allow you to do that. And so deepen this understanding all around allows us to move in the direction we want to move.
So I'm really curious about how we get this out to as many parents as possible. So this week I learned about, because we're always looking at kind of best case examples and what's happening around the world. And this week I learned about the Jordan Game Lab, which before they teach the children about gaming, they bring the parents in. So they bring the parents in, give them an education about what games are, and then off they go, and then they bring the kids in. And then the parents are much more accepting. And I think they've got something like 3,000 game students. And it was brand new to me this week, but I just thought, what a great example. But yeah, I'm curious about like how do we get the parents on board? How do we get this into their hands and help them have the right information?
Well, from a marketing perspective, I think about like meeting parents where they are, right? And parents already have support systems for themselves. Often they're centered around school environments with a parent-teacher association, or it might be a faith-based group where families come together for discussions. So I think there's actually a really grassroots effective level of getting resources in the hands of parents in places that already are spending time, because it is a community conversation too, right? Parents of kids who are friends. I mean, like it's a whole community effort. At a global level, there's another aspect to this, which we're really excited to explore, which is also recognizing that communities are different in different markets around the world. And relationships with games, whether it's from a policy perspective, it's from access perspective, cultural background, that there's a need to pay attention to what's happening in different places around the world, to be able to speak and meet parents and where they are. And I think that's kind of our ground roots approach. And then there's the messaging and communication, which we hope that the white paper will open up possibilities. There's so much that's in there that can be shared in a digital environment as well, in kind of that census too.
Do you also think that the momentum is right now for parents who may have played themselves, who start having a more sort of educated, might be the wrong word, but a stronger vocabulary for also talking about, I remember when I played?
I think people that are born more recent are born digital, while those before might have to stretch for some knowledge. But as I mentioned earlier, the nature of games are so rapidly evolving. And then, of course, we moved away from console, and we have mobile games that are more accessible.
I'd like to add on to something that you said earlier, which I think is relevant here, which is the power of play. And as any human, we all remember playing, right? Whether we played video games
Sure.
or not, and the importance of play in our lives as children, and then hopefully as we grow up, we never lose that joy and the need for play, and to frame games as digital play. It is play, right? And we want our children to play. We just have to learn about the medium and the environment in which they're playing in. And I think that's a really important shift that all parents, right, whether they were gamers when they were little or before 83 or after 83, but if we can help position games, video game play in that context, it's much more relatable.
I had my son wished for the Eiffel Tower in Lego. I thought it was too crazy of a project. He had it anyway from a relative. And then we went to Paris for the Olympics, and he walked around the Eiffel Tower but was looking at it as a constructor. So he started thinking, well, this is actually not, my fence is taller here, or this is different. And then when I mentioned it to some of my friends at Lego, they were like, oh yeah, that's learning through play. That's their whole motto. That's everything they do. And I was like, the more we can bring those examples, because what I'm seeing was that when I played a lot of Civilizations, I learned a lot more about the Aztec history than I would have from any session in school, because that was not my focus. But then figuring out when I play this game, I actually learned something that I can that has stayed with me.
I'm a proud father of 3, 9, 17, and 20. So I've, seen them grow up playing all sorts of games over the last, two decades. But, my 9-year-old just last week couldn't get through a particular level. And, he goes onto YouTube. He then does a walkthrough and tries to figure out, why is he failing? Why can't he? What is he missing after trying and failing. And I smiled to myself and said, what beautiful problem solving, not giving up. He wants to get it done. And he went back and he did it. And, later he turned off the game and, he was content. And I said, this is a great skill. You mentioned it is play, but because of the interactive nature of it, you're getting something from it. You always have to accomplish something in a game. And, kids and adults alike, it's a fun way to entertain yourself. It doesn't have to be the only form of entertainment. We're allowed to listen to music, we're allowed to watch movies, but we're also allowed to play games.
I think we've got so many kind of great positive examples, and that's the objective of this podcast as well, is to make sure that we get these great conversations out into the world so that everyone can better understand and have a different perspective of games. But there's still quite a lot of fear-driven dialogue in the world. Like, why do you think that is? And obviously we're trying to kind of overcome that with the podcast, with the white paper, and we'll be, I'm so glad that we can help kind of share the white paper as well, because we want to get it out there far and wide too. But yeah, it's just, how do we minimize the amount of fear-driven narrative there is online, and then try to switch that narrative?
Well, let's face it, as parents, our job is to worry. I mean, we can't help it. We worry about our kids' well-being. When are they going to be home? Are they home on time? Are they eating enough? And so we worry about how they're spending their time. And a lot of time is being spent playing video games. And I think fear, comes from a lack of understanding. And the information that may be found online is not representative always of fact and evidence. And I think there's a real need to make sure that evidence-based research, like what's coming out with the white paper, is available and can reach parents. But I think opening up a conversation, I think understanding, working through fear and worry is best approached by understanding. So the more conversations and the more resources we can provide parents so they can understand what's happening. And through that understanding, not only, I think, it can help dispel the fear, but it also can help build better relationships with their children, which ultimately will, help develop well-rounded, educated children that are also able to take care of themselves. And I think that's also a big part of our initiative with Raising Good Gamers, is to empower young people to be safe themselves and to have positive experiences within and healthy experiences within gaming environments. And what else do we want for our kids is to raise them to be healthy, responsible, kind, people. And let's have that happen within gaming environments too.
Yeah, unfortunately, fear or negative news cycles seems to be the common baseline in society, right? We can just watch the evening news and you see they don't really share feel-good stories. It's all, bad things that happened throughout the day, locally, around the world, et cetera. So, some of that I think is just inherent human nature for whatever reason, that the brain focuses on the salacious, the scandalous, et cetera. So it's not to say that there aren't or can't be issues in any industry, any sector, any form of entertainment, but there needs to be more balance in the dialogue. And I think it is upon us, and us as an industry, but us as a broader community of players, of fans, of families, to come together and say, okay, what do I need? What do I want? If I look back, my neighbors know that I work for a large video game company. So if I had the last 10 neighbors come and ask me a question, oh, my son or daughter's playing X, like, I don't understand. Can you walk me through what this game is? They leave happy. They leave like, okay, I got it. I understand. Thank you. So now I can't speak to everyone. You can't speak to everyone, but I think through the podcast, through the research, through additional, in-community activation and events that we will have to do to be successful, we can reach more people and explain and frankly solicit feedback too. This has to be a two-way street. We're not speaking at anybody. It's really starting that dialogue so we can share.
I love your example of screen time, because back to your point that sometimes gaming becomes screen time in the public discourse, and screen time is then either seen as bad or purely social media discussions. I think when parents understand that when you have a challenge in game, right now my son is learning magic tricks, so that's part of his sort of sitting with playing cards. Then when he says, oh, can I quickly watch this trick on YouTube? And he pauses the video and he practices and he goes back and forth. If someone came in and said, oh, he's on the iPad again, I would actually be offended, because that's just a resource for him to learn from.
It's like going to the library.
When I was a kid, it would be sort of going through a book and saying, well, page 12 will explain me this trick. Now it's a pause button. But I think the more we can open up that, look, be actively interested in what your kid does and what it gives them. And then, of course, if you start seeing them being angry or obnoxious, maybe go out and play basketball instead. Do something else, because as with anything, if it's too much, it's too much. Then change the content.
Yeah, you said something that I think is really, which I don't think we've talked about yet, is it actually is better to move beyond understanding. I mean, that's really important, to engagement, and to give parents a pathway and an opening to play with their kids, right? To do things together. And I think that's another interesting area of research that we did within the white paper is better understanding, do parents want to play with their kids? Do kids want to play with their parents? What happens when they play together? And that's something that it's a wonderful opportunity that the parents often don't even think about.
I love that. And I want to ask you some questions about the questions you asked in the research, but just before that, so I think it's also really interesting to help parents understand what questions they could ask of their children, and really understanding what are they playing, why are they playing. So before they put the guardrails in place, it's, play with them or just ask them questions. I think kids are so savvy when it comes to screen time and what they can play. So my 7-year-old, it's a funny story. My 7-year-old, because we're podcasting, he thinks he's a podcaster. And he's actually really good. And he took my phone, and him and his friend, they've got like a little iPad, little kiddie device. And they disappeared, and him and his friend came back half an hour later. They'd recorded 7 minutes on this iPad, and they said, "We've made a podcast." So they were like, "We want to show it to you." Like, okay. So we sat down with his friend's mum and dad as well, and they were talking about gaming, and they were talking about the games that they like to play, and then they started talking about how do you feel when your mum or dad says it's dinner time and you have to stop to play. And his friend said, "Oh, sometimes I get angry." He says, "But I try not to be angry because I know it's dinner time." He says, "But they just don't understand that I just need to finish this bit." And then my son was like, "Yeah, I'm the same. But then I know that if I don't put the screen down, I won't get to play it later." And they had this really adult conversation. And they were like, "Well, how if you get angry, if you're told to come off your screen, what do you do?" And my little boy said, "I go outdoors. I get some fresh air. I try and do something else to take my mind off it." And it was so grown up. And I just thought, kids really get it.
They do. I think they're a lot wiser than at least I was at that age when I see them having those similar conversations. But, Susanna, you mentioned like, do parents want to play with their kids? I'd actually simplify that because many parents don't know how to play with their kids. But I don't know if you have different experiences. My son will just say, "Hey, Dad, can you come watch me play Roblox?" And look, it's not the most fun thing in the world to just sit there and watch somebody play, but he wants me to be next to him. He wants me to see him do whatever game he's doing. And I said, that's part of spending some time together. So I'll sit. But that's a wonderful opportunity for parents to know what is the game, what's happening. Because if you never play and you never watch your child play, then how are you supposed to know what's happening? It's the same thing if you were watching television. If there was a new series and you never watched it, you didn't know what it was about, you might have some questions as like, what is my son or daughter watching?
Plus, it has to start there. You set the scene from a young age that, look, I'm engaged in wherever you go, whatever you play. So you would never let them talk to a big group of strangers in the playing field, especially not if there was a big age difference. You would be like, who are you talking to? What are you talking about? And the same if they close the door. As a parent, you have to say, well, part of my responsibility as a parent is also to insist to know that just because you are older doesn't mean that you can at all times say, this is not for you to know. So if there is online chats, if there is games that are too hardcore, then as a parent, that is your responsibility to say, this is not. I've met sometimes people coming up saying, well, it's impossible because my kid either loves these hardcore games or they have older siblings, so it's hard to control. And then I said, well, I hope you don't have that same philosophy with alcohol or porn, that just because someone has found it, it means all kids in the household needs to check it out. So of course it then sits on the parent to say, look, we have to have these conversations. And if your older brother is playing a shooter game, then you cannot be in that room. And the older kid should also say, this is not for you. You have to leave the room. Otherwise I have to pause the game. So how do we make those conversations also way more natural? That as a parent, you are concerned, but you would act in real life. This is about also insisting that you're involved in the digital presence of your kid.
A quick related story. We run at Games of Change game design programs or offer teachers curriculum so they can run game design programs in the classroom. And we often get pushback from teachers saying, well, I don't know anything about game design. Like, I'm nervous, like I need to be an expert. And the truth is, and we encourage them, is don't be afraid to let your students be the experts. You can learn from them. And I take that to same thing with parenting. It's okay to not know as much as your child, your shared experience, right? Where you sat there and you let your son tell you about the game, right? Inform you, teach you about the game. I mean, there's such value in giving to respecting and encouraging a young person in your life to show their expertise and their confidence. And I think that's something that parents shouldn't be afraid of. There's so many like wonderful outcomes and benefits from allowing that situation to take place.
Plus, I think the competitive nature of playing with your kids, there is we talked about efficacy in a previous episode, and the fact that you can lose to your child, honestly lose. So there's so many things as an adult where you would try to navigate that. Okay, I'll let them win this one, but in games sometimes you actually lose to a kid that just does it better, and that's a core memory for the kid. Yeah. Winning in FIFA or doing this move better or explaining their parent that, hey, you should have done this. That feeling is very strong. And I think those are some of the best gaming moments I've shared with kids, is when they feel that, hey, I mastered better than you.
I remember when I was a small child, my dad would say, "You'll never beat me racing." And I couldn't at 6, at 7, at 8. He would blow past me until one day. I forget if it was like 6th grade or 7th grade. I was like, "Dad, I got this." And I did the same to my children. I was like, "You'll never beat me racing." And again, there comes the time where they do. And I love your story because that happens a lot sooner in gaming. They become very good, very proficient, great at problem solving. And I realized, oh my God, I'm not only slow running, but I'm slow on a game compared to a 9, 10 or 15-year-old. So it's a very heartwarming moment where they look at you and say, "Dad, I got you."
Not to mention reflexes.
No, it's all reflexes. We're used to, like in the Olympics, you age out at like 20 or 21 for many sports because the body cannot do what a younger person does. And you see the same thing in esports. Yeah. There's a few exceptions, but esports, they're also like very young because of the reflexes. Slowing down.
Well, yeah, I definitely was faster at button mashing maybe 10 years ago. So I just want to find out a bit more about the research. Like, what are some of the key questions or themes that you're covering? I know we can't get into detail about the actual research itself, the big reveals, but what are the big themes?
In the white paper, Dr. Rachel Cowart, who did the research for us, looked a lot of existing research that was available, as well as talked to parents and developers to understand what are the biggest concerns. And a lot of them we touched on, today. The biggest question of I don't understand what my kids are doing at gaming, right? I don't, and then it's brought to a very personal level of what do I do when, right? I don't understand when. Is this bad for my child? I see so much negative, information out there. And we're able to address at a high level what parents all over the world are saying, and we're able to address it at a very personal level with interviews with parents who are actively seeking information, as well as looking at things from the policy side and the industry side to offer guidance and provide better clarity for the game industry so we can all be on the same page. You talked about language. It's like a taxonomy, right? What are the ways that we can collectively talk about these issues so that it can be adopted by developers, everywhere? What are resources that can be made available to those interested in talking with policy? It is positive storytelling, but it's also reshaping the conversation, right? It's reshaping the conversation. And then how do we offer practical toolkits and guides for parents so that they can take away and apply into their lives things that they've learned through things that have surfaced through the white paper.
And if you then fast forward 5 years, the white paper is out, more developers are taking on the challenge. What is the dream state? What does good look like in 5 years' time?
Oh, what is good? What does good gaming look like? Right. Well, I'll look at it from a child's experience and also a parent's experience. I would like to see, a trend, a societal trend where we see more parents playing games. Those statistics go up about the amount of time that kids and parents are playing together. I'd like to see dialogue and storytelling that comes out of that can surface up to policy, right? Because it is through real world stories that we can collectively understand and change behavior. That's my belief. There's such a power in storytelling. And if we can encourage more people to be active, have more positive experience in gaming environments, not only with young people on their own, but young people with parents, that we're able to collect and share those stories and maybe change the news cycle a little bit, right?
So if anybody watching wants to get involved, what should they do? Who could they talk to? Like, where should we point them to?
Well, I love that your podcast reaches all sorts of people, right? We have industry followers, which I'm sure you have, and there are people who don't know that much about games, right, and want to learn. So I think what I'd like to address are different types of audiences. Raising Good Gamers, along with Tencent support, is in essence like a cross-sector, multi-stakeholder initiative. So from the industry side, please track us down, right, at Games for Change. Talk to us about how you want to be involved and tell us their stories, right, of what is happening within different industry parts of what we do within the gaming sector. And from parents and educators and researchers, we do have all of our information on the Raising Good Gamers website. We'll be populating that website with lots of information and resources, free, because as a not-for-profit, this is something that we want to make widely available, and talk to your kids. Like in the basis of levels, you don't need a toolkit on how to talk to your child. Ask them a question. What's your favorite game? Can I watch you play? How does it feel when I call you for dinner? I mean, these are simple questions. And yes, we will be coming up with toolkits and resources for the top 10 questions you need to ask your child, right? Like just help and support, but be open and talk to your kids.
I think though having deeper or more difficult conversations is easier said than done. I remember having a professor who once, got the whole class to say, do we believe that communication is effective to have a healthy relationship? We all said, yes, of course. We rose our hands. Does that, in a relationship, also mother, father, child's friend? Yes. Good communication across the board. It's like, perfect. So when he all had us hooked that we need to have good, healthy communication, it's like, okay, raise of hands. When was the last time you went to a parent and said, Mom, please tell me the last time I disappointed you and what I could do to be a better son? We all laughed nervously because we've never had that conversation with our parents. In fact, it's kind of mortifying to even think of that. But the point was that we can agree that communication is important, but we actually don't do it that well. We're less probing than we should be. Ask your teenage child, how can I be a better parent? They'll sit you down and speak for the next 2 hours, everything you're doing wrong, but we don't ask that type of question. So, to your point, I think being able to have those more meaningful, deeper discussions, it takes a little, you have to kind of swallow hard, take a deep breath, but having those conversations with your child is critical.
There was a social media post. I'm an adult, I can control it. Where the question you should ask, and it works for any age, now I've tried it with several kids, to take it away from the kid itself, is to ask, what should my generation, or what should I know about being, and then their age? So what should I know about being 9? Because then the kid disassociates and starts talking about their world without feeling that they're outing something. So it's quite interesting, and it works. Now I've also tried it with teenagers. What do you need? What should I know about being 14? Then a 14-year-old kid will go into, this is my world, without feeling that I'm probing too actively. And it's quite interesting how those simple conversational tools actually sometimes bring you closer to their world. And that could be the same. What should I know about gaming when you're this age or when you're this context?
Yeah, and I guess like timing of when you ask kids questions is key. There was research to show that the first 17 minutes after school, you shouldn't ask them any questions about school.
you won't get a response.
You won't get anything. You just get good.
Yeah.
Yes.
17?
Good. 17 minutes.
Wow.
After that, it's usually before bedtime.
Minute 18, then you're good to go. Yeah.
Before bedtime, all the stories come out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably a good time to start asking them questions. Talking about more questions, we now have your golden thread questions. Ooh. So these are these are 2 questions. One is the same one that we ask all of our guests.
Okay.
And the second one will be different because it will be asked from a previous guest. Now, they gave us the question not knowing who was going to get the question. And then we're also going to ask you to ask a question of future guests. So do you want to go first?
Yes. So obviously this is a game and a good game podcast. So how do we best talk about games? That's of course our personal relationship to them. What is your favorite game and why?
Well, look, having the CEO of Subway Surfer here, I'll have to say Subway Surfer is a Marti family favorite. I think the games that are now kind of my favorite are the ones that I play with the family. So it could be everything from, kind of smaller mobile, kind of a tower defense game like a Kingdom Rush. I was on the board, love them dearly, but my family's had so much fun, kind of strategy gaming. On kind of bigger game, my son and I are playing It Takes Two. I don't know if you've played it, but it's a 2-player game. So you have to get through by collaborating and figuring out, how to beat the level. And it's great. And now when neighbor kids play, they'll end up picking up where I left off and they'll keep playing that game. So it's a wonderful game. Highly recommended.
Nice.
At Games for Change, a lot of the game developers in our community are from the indie scene. And I always make an effort to try to try out games that are coming through our channels. We have an awards program. And although this is a bigger indie, and it's a few years old now, but I absolutely love Sky, Children of Light by that game company. And I love Genova Chen's work. I mean, Journey is just, there's just absolutely beautiful games. But the intention that they put in, the team put in, into the gameplay within Sky, Children of Light is just, it really speaks to me. It's inherently designed to encourage positive engagement. And it's fun. And it's successful. There's one thing to say, I love this small indie game and I want to give it a platform to get out there, but like it's a model that is working. A excellent example of craftsmanship, purpose and mission, and then excellent technical capabilities and the game loops that they've developed. And it makes me feel just so good when I play it. And so I'm going to say that.
Great choices. So we've got your question from a previous guest. Now, this is the first time we've asked 2 people the same question.
So we'll score you afterwards.
All right, let's have it.
Out of 10. So the question is, and Danny, we'll come to you first.
Okay.
What is your hope for the industry?
Wow, what a big question. Somebody asked this. Okay. I think it's a interesting time for the industry, although, there remains growth. We all know that it has been a turbulent time in the industry of the last few years coming out of the pandemic. I think there's a lot of anxiety now with, AI tools and what that means to the creative process, to gaming, to the health and future of studios. So, my hope is that we can all collectively figure this out, as smoothly as possible. It's not lost on me. We're not alone as an industry. I think most industries are going through a moment of self-reflection and seeing, how are we going to be bigger, stronger, faster coming out of this, but not losing our way through that process. So that would be my hope.
I've been doing a lot of traveling around the world over the past couple of years as we've been helping grow community of developers and other stakeholders that are interested in the power that games can have, to drive real world change. And I'm so encouraged about the talent that I'm seeing in so many places. And I hope that the industry and the investment community can find value in investing in talent all over. And it's not concentrated on bigger titles by big publishers, and that these big bets don't, continue to dominate what games come into the world, because there's just such amazing talent, whether it's in Nairobi or Lagos, Cape Town, Turkey, and there's so many opportunities not only to shape economic opportunity in these markets to enter for developers to enter in, but there's also incredible player base. So that can drive the economic model, right, of driving revenue for this industry. So I really hope that the industry, and I'm encouraged by it, that will look beyond the traditional creators and models.
And I think if you look at history, what I love about the game sector, which I don't know if there's parallels in other entertainment fields. I'm sure there are at some level, but you see some huge titles that don't come out of what one would consider a traditional creative strength. Like in motion pictures, of course, Hollywood reigns supreme. But if you go back to early mobile days, remember Flappy Bird? Flappy Bird was out of Vietnam. One of the Game of the Year, I guess 2 years ago or so, Baldur's Gate is out of Belgium. You have Path of Exile, huge Path of Exile 2, coming out of New Zealand. It is wonderful how creators can create wherever they are around the world.
And I love my favorite example of that is Bloons.
Yeah.
Because Bloons was concepted in New Zealand, and it was a PC title. And then some Scottish developers out of Dundee said, we can turn that into mobile. So you have one of the most very successful sort of tower defense games being co-developed between New Zealand and Scotland. And they both have a tremendous business case on doing it, but it wouldn't happen in any other industry, that you have creative teams in those places finding each other.
But I think that's the norm in our industry. I mean, I know at our studios, a game might be developed in LA, but there's sound engineering happening in Singapore. There are development teams, in multiple different markets. And I think that's what really makes it exciting to see how it really is a global industry. I was mentioning Hollywood. You see the Academy Awards, right? Every year there is a best international feature, best foreign film. And when you look at the Game Awards, there's no such thing as a best foreign game. What is a foreign game? We're all foreign games the way that games are developed. So that's what I love. It really is one global community, unlike, I think, other sectors that might, focus more on the local kind of nationality. Games are global.
I love that. And if we think about, one of our previous guests has mentioned about games studios being the architects of culture. If we think about where people are coming from when they make a game and all those different perspectives and cultures in one, it makes it such a rich experience for the player.
So now over to your questions.
So I don't know who the next guest is, but I think relevant to our conversation today about raising good gamers and parents, I want to ask the next interviewer. Imagine yourself as a 12-year-old. What game do you wish your parents would play with you?
Great question.
Oh, love it.
We want to answer that.
I know I want to answer it as well. Is that for us?
Great question.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Great.
And Danny?
I think a lot of the theme, today was about, addressing misunderstandings or lack of knowledge. So I would ask the next guest, what is the one thing you want to communicate, impart to somebody who doesn't really know about the game sector? What would it be that you share?
Amazing.
Great questions.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your insights. We can't wait to shout loud about the white paper when it comes out. And thank you so much for pushing the right agenda in this industry.
Yeah, and thank you for Games for Change for doing everything you do, and Tencent for being a role model and leader in the space. I think when the big companies step up, the rest will follow. So, I think we're creating a bit of a movement. So thank you. Thank you for your time and your knowledge and doing everything you do.
No, thank you for having us. It's been wonderful.
This episode of the Good Game Club podcast is brought to you with the support of our strategic partner Tencent, who share our ambition to reveal gaming's hidden and unexpected benefits, shedding light on the positive impact that gameplay can have on people and the planet.